welcome back to Hark the Pod. I am your sports editor, Shelby Swanson. I'm joined here by assistant sports editor, Daniel Way. Daniel, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Shelby?
You know what? I'm pretty good. Spent some time in Cameron Indoor today. Could be the move. Some would say enemy territory. I would say, it's all the same to me because I'm objective, of course.
All right.
But Caroline is also here with us, of course, senior writer, also national championship cover, it seems, for the Daily Tar Heel. Caroline, how you doing today?
I'm really good.
Really good. Caroline has not had the chance to come on the pod since helping out with that special edition paper for the Daily Tar Heel, which, speaking of, we made a special edition paper, if you haven't heard. Not sure why you wouldn't have, but, anyways. That was for UNC Field Hockey's 2023 National Championship win. If you haven't been able to pick up a copy, please email me at sports@dailytarheel.com. We'll find a time for you to come into the office, or you can work out the details so we can ship you a paper. I've done that for a few people who have emailed me and our general manager. So, keep that up. Just because you're not in the area doesn't mean that we can't get you a beautiful paper. So, tap in. This week's episode, switching up a little bit, it's going to be kind of a year in review theme. This week's print paper is our 2023 year in review. So be sure to pick that up in blue boxes this week. But that being said, it's not going to be a standard kind of check-in on any teams. We'll get to some basketball talk later because, of course, me, we got to get that hoop talk in. But we're going to start with a little bit of a recap, specifically a national championships recap. Not to get too blue heart, but UNC, of course, is known by some as the University National Champions. The academic program did live up to that to a certain extent this year. Women's tennis, and that's team. We also got doubles wins, field hockey, diving and wrestling individual titles. So we're going to get into a little bit of that, recap it a little bit, and then just kind of talk and share some memories about covering those teams, those individuals. And of course, what better person to have than Caroline? She's been part of 2 special editions for national championships this year with field hockey, as we mentioned, also the tennis one. So that being said, we'll start with some tennis. So as you guys hopefully know, the number 1 UNC women's tennis team secured its first NCAA national championship, again, as opposed to the ITA titles, which they've, won some in the past, if you know indoor tennis, but we'll get out of the semantics with that. It was a 4-1 victory against number 3 NC State, so a little triangle rivalry action, and that was thanks to key tiebreak victories in singles by Fiona Crawley, Elizabeth Scotty, and Carson Tangillig. After the game, head coach Brian Kalbus praised the team's toughness and competitiveness, and of course, it was Tangillig's final point in the decisive third set that secured the championship for North Carolina, capping off a historic win in the NCAA tournament. Now, Caroline, you traveled to Orlando, I believe it was, to cover this in person. Just what do you remember about the win, that experience?
The main thing was that it was a little bit of redemption. UNC and NC State played 3 times that season. So the first time during the regular season, UNC actually basically swept them. I believe it was 7-0, something like that. But that was because NC State was missing their number 1 player, Diana Schneider. And then they met again in the ACC championship, and UNC just got absolutely wrecked. NC State came out with this just ferocious energy, immediately grabbed the doubles point, and UNC never recovered from that point forward. And
they
so,
back.
Going into the national title game, it was very much okay, 1-1, it could go either way, but UNC made some really key adjustments in the doubles lineup. They moved, I believe it was Scotty and Reese, to different doubles locations. So they used to play at number 1, and then they moved them to Scotty to number 2, and then Reese to number 3 with Riley Tran. And so I believe it was Riley and Reese that were able to actually take the victory for the doubles, as well as Carson and Scotty.
Yeah, and so obviously we had that national championship, and then there was another national championship win for UNC in women's tennis, that being Fiona Crawley and Carson Tangillig in the 2023 NCAA Women's Tennis Doubles Championship. And that was a little bit of an interesting one, with Crawley and Tangillig securing the victory against the team of fellow Tar Heels, being first-year Reese Brentmeyer, and then also Elizabeth Scotty. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah.
That's just it was an interesting all Tar Heel final there. So, you
Yeah.
knew UNC was going to win
Right.
regardless. But
Right.
anyway, it's just kind of a unique
Yeah.
setup.
It was kind of interesting too because they both won one set each. So it came down to like a tie break. So honestly, it was kind of perfect for both of them. Like it wasn't a sweep. It was just 1-1 and then they, had the tie break. But I just remember Coach Calbus talking about how like they made a pact, him and Coach Thompson, who each Thompson coaches Reese and Scotty, and then Calbus is for Fiona and Carson. And he just talked about how they refused to coach during that match. They just kind of sat back and just waited for it to be over. They did not engage at all. So I think that's pretty interesting. It was, obviously going to be a UNC victory either way.
Yeah. And moving on, we had that sort of beginning of summer, late spring, and the other team title that UNC won was field hockey. Again, Caroline covered that. She has some luck with these things, it seems. And we won't get as much into it because obviously it's a little bit fresh in everyone's mind, but that was the number 1 North Carolina field hockey team securing its 5th national title in 6 years. So, they're used to this in a sense, but obviously being historic in the sense that it was Erin Matson's first national title as a head coach, the other 4 of those 5 being with her as a player. I guess, Caroline, just as you've had some time to reflect about the season since putting out the special edition, having covered the team, from start to finish. Obviously, there's a lot of national media hype and things deservedly that came in towards the end, but the Daily Tar Heel is really there from a beat standpoint, start to finish. What stands out to you the most, and what do you think is, I guess, the ceiling for this team, like moving forward? It's early to say, having they just ended
Right.
the season, but
well, I would say this team really looked different after they lost to Virginia in the regular season. After that, you just never really saw them fall into that offensive complacency that kind of plagued them in some of their early losses. And from that point forward, they just were way more aggressive. Their attitude was different. And I think that just made such a big difference in the long run. And I mean, we've seen Riley Heck, Charlie Bruder, they're leading the offense and they're coming back. Like they're still young. Riley will be a junior next year. Charlie will be a sophomore. So as long as you have, these underclassmen that are really just kind of carrying a little bit, like they're going to be fine.
Yeah. And moving on from the team titles, have a few individuals with Aranza Vasquez and Austin O'Connor. Vasquez being diving, O'Connor being wrestling. So Aranza Vasquez, UNC Junior, she claimed 2 national titles at the NCAA Division I Women's Swimming and Diving Championship, that being in Knoxville, Tennessee. Vasquez won the 1-meter springboard event and then followed that up with a gold in the 3-meter dive. And her victories marked, historic achievements. She was the first UNC diver to win the 1-meter springboard title and only the 7th individual female Tar Heel athlete to secure a national championship. If you haven't checked out some of our coverage of Vasquez and her story, I would really encourage you to do that. A lot of that reporting done by our staff writer, Maya Wade. Vasquez has been pretty open about facing some post-Olympic depression, went to the Olympics, wasn't really satisfied with her performance and kind of fell into a little bit of a rut. But after, I think, taking a complete break from diving for a while, came back, credits a lot of just her journey to her really close relationship with Gamboa, the head diving coach, and both Vasquez and Gamboa received top honors from the College Swimming Coaches Association of America, with Vasquez being named the Women's Diver of the Year and Gamboa being named the Women's Diving Coach of the Year. Yeah, she has a great story. We've also done some reporting just about how they're bonded with their shared Latinx heritage, Vasquez being a kind of a little-known diver coming out of La Paz, Mexico. But yeah, so great stories there. You can check it out on the Daily Tar Heels website. And the other title being Austin O'Connor in wrestling. And this is a little bit of a funny one because I remember watching this with Daniel when we were was it in Columbus? Do you remember this?
No.
Okay, well, I remember. Daniel's fake. But Austin O'Connor, 6-year wrestler, has since graduated, but He headed into his final season in North Carolina. I remember he was talked a lot about feeling disrespected. He had a graduate campaign cut short by a knee injury. And he was ranked, I think, preseason number 7. And he talked about how like it was a joke. And throughout the season, battled back from injury. And eventually defeated Penn State's Levi Haynes 6-2 to secure his second national title. There's a really interesting feature about him kind of battling through the doubts, pushing back the haters by Evan Rogers on the websites. If I remember, I think there's an anecdote about how when he was preseason ranked number 7, he had next to his mat somebody put like a list of names of like all the guys that were ranked above him. And so he like used that as motivation. Anyways, just like straight dog mentality on that one. But that being said, we've kind of caught you guys up on all the national title wins, the national champions. I guess just starting with Daniel, of these moments, which do you think, as somebody that covers UNC athletics as a student here, is the most memorable to you and why?
Yeah, I would definitely say the field hockey one is the most memorable for me. I've only like covered one field hockey game like ever, and that wasn't even like college field hockey. It was like my freshman year. There's an exhibition match against Team USA and Team England, and Aaron Matson was like playing. But just to me, what sticks out is like after that matchup, I interviewed Erin, and like the next day, like she like saw me in her car and like waved, like she remembered me and recognized me. Like
You're famous.
Actually, yeah. It was pretty meaningful to me. I was like a lot younger, as a writer. And seeing her win a national championship in her first year at the helm of the program, I think was really special. So that's why I'll always remember that.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Great answer. Yeah. I mean, I would say the same. Like if it's me, I would say kind of between field hockey and Aranza. I think field hockey just in the sense that, and the team obviously deserves a ton of recognition. They work their butts off, but just the story of Aaron Matson and I think what it means to women's sports, the ability in general also for female athletes to be able to come back and coach at collegiate programs so early into their professional career. Obviously, Caroline, you wrote about that a lot in your column to Matson, which you guys should check that out. It's what's Dear Aaron or Dear Matson.
Yeah, sorry.
This one's about
Sorry, this national championship's about you, I think.
Yeah. Definitely check that out. She kind of goes into the basically I'm stealing her flow right now, but I think the broader implications of that win for her as a coach are so historic. And then just personally, I think reading and helping edit some coverage about Aranza has meant a lot, just with how she's been such an advocate, kind of just through example of battling through mental health struggles and battling through burnout. I just think it's real, and I've had the pleasure of interviewing her a few times, and she just has a really, really interesting story as well. So for me, I would say it's kind of between those two. But Caroline, I'm curious to get your thoughts as the one who's been there in person for all of these, or a lot of them.
Well, I will probably have to say women's tennis.
The
first one is always the most special. Just think that it was just the perfect ending to a really dominant season. UNC has been kind of this dominant women's tennis program for so long, and they never were able to get over that hump in the NCAAs and win the team title. And so this was their year for that. Just a huge kind of the adjustments they made, the kind of things that they acknowledged that were different than usual. I remember Coach Calbus talked about they had a team captain, Sophia Patel, and she did not play in the starting lineup, but she took on this role as a team leader and kind of motivating everyone and just kind of bringing the energy up a little bit. And you can kind of see it, their togetherness throughout the season really made a big difference. That's why they were willing to make those adjustments in the doubles lineup, in the singles lineup, just very unselfishly. But yeah, I would definitely think that one is most special to me. And selfishly, traveling to a national championship is just different. It's so different, and it's really special coming into the Cone Kenfield indoor center, and the national paper is like hanging on the wall, and it's like, oh my god,
right.
I did that. Like, oh my god, I wrote that.
Yeah, no, just the experience of it. And I will say that's just a quick plug for anybody that is listening. If you want to support student journalism, always consider making a donation to the Daily Tar Heel. There are, I believe, ways just in the form, you can find that on our websites, that you can donate straight to the sports travel fund, but donations really make a difference and allow us to go in person and tell these stories. A lot of times for Olympic sports like women's tennis, like field hockey, the Daily Tar Heel is really the only one that's covering these teams, and they are so talented, and they deserve the same coverage as the men's basketball, the football, and donations and supporting us at the Daily Tar Heel allow us to do that. So that's a little quick plug before we get into some ball talk. Daniel, I think we're going to have you exit the stew. We're going to bring Gwen in. She was covering that Florida State men's basketball game on Saturday. Caroline, we're going to have her stick around because she was covering the UNC women's basketball game against South Carolina on Thursday. Daniel, before you part, any words?
Just want to see some sets run by Coach Banghart.
Period.
That's about it.
Right. So with that national championship talk out of the way, we are going to get into some hoops talk. You can't escape it. Obviously it's year in review, the DTH, the last print paper is going out this week. It's sad. Everyone's going to have to wait till next semester to get that content in blue boxes. But starting with men's basketball, the number 17 UNC men's basketball team staged a second half comeback. Part of that was a 22-point run to defeat Florida State 78-70 in the first ACC matchup of the season at the Deanie Smith Center. Graduate Armando Bacot and senior RJ Davis led the way with 27 and 13 points respectively. Bacot secured his fourth double-double of the season. A little bit of a shaky start, and the Tar Heels were down 6 points at halftime, but were able to turn the game around in the second half, going into a full court press, I believe specifically a diamond press. That's something that Grace Nugent wrote about in her sidebar after the game. And it's something that the Tar Heels have practiced, but hadn't quite deployed in a game. But the defensive pressure was able to create turnovers. The Tar Heels capitalized off of that and were able to pull off the win. So just going around as we're kind of looking at the team ahead of the big Jimmy V Classic game in New York, what do you guys see as the biggest difference so far in this year's squad compared to last year? And we can go to Gwen for that because you were at the game on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I think it really comes down to grit. This is a gritty team from what we've seen so far. Something that was touched on a lot during the post-game press conferences with all the players was the fact that this team is one that won this game, but last year's team might not have been. And I know that was kind of a sentiment that was shared at least around the press box, and some of the players were like, well, this is a different team, I don't want to speak for last year, but I think really it would have been dicey for last year's team to come back. Like Shelby said, it was a deficit at halftime. I think at one point they were down by 14 points, but then broke that deficit, slowly built back up, and got that ultimate 8-point victory. So I think it really came down to the grit of this team. They kept playing hard. They didn't let themselves get discouraged. Came out of the locker room at halftime, especially in the second part of the second half. They looked like a different team, kept taking good shots instead of settling for, I feel like, the shots that we might have seen last year that weren't always set up the best. And then I think the biggest difference between this year's team and last year's team, that's been evident to me at least, has really just been the ball movement. They're moving the ball around the court so much. It just seems like they're really, really searching for that great shot. That's something Hubert Davis says a lot. Not the good shots, the great shots. But they're really moving the ball around the court, making a lot of passes. Obviously, with the addition of Elliot Cadeau, who's described himself as a pass-first point guard. alleviating some of the pressure of like ball handling from RJ and allowing him to be more of a shooter, which has helped the team a lot because you saw him score those 27 points. That was kind of a key part of the comeback victory, I would say. And so it's really just a combination of factors, but I would say it comes down to the mentality of this year's team, which is a lot different from last year.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. The thing that I was going to talk to, obviously, was ball movement. As we know and have written about, UNC was not exactly great at that last season. Specifically, the Tar Heels' 12 assists per game last season was good for third worst in the ACC. It's an uncharacteristically low mark for the program, and North Carolina offense ranked 310th out of 366 teams in Division I in assist rate per KenPom. In fact, the most assists a Tar Heel recorded in a game last season was Caleb Love's 7 in an overtime win against Ohio State, and we just saw Elliot Cadeau put up 10 assists and 0 turnovers against one of the top defenses in the country in Tennessee, and he's a first-year guard. So that being said, that's something that was without a doubt just not possible on last year's team. And these marks are an incredible improvement. The other thing I would say, aside from just the ball movement, which I really think the Tar Heels can credit that to the explosive 61 first half performance against Tennessee, Harrison Ingram has made an incredible impact. That's something I know, Gwen, you wrote about that following the Tennessee game, but I think he really is that stretch four that UNC was looking for in Pete Nance, but he can actually shoot the outside jumper, so that does make a huge difference in terms of the, stretch factor. He's been incredible, and he brings a ton of energy, kind of speaking to that grit you talked about. Something that Hubert Davis talked about, I think, following the Tennessee game was just how much Harrison just consistently shows his pride for the program. He talks about all the time post game, like, we're talking about, like, why are you yelling after every single shot you take? And he's like, well, I'm just so happy to be here to put on a Carolina uniform. Hubert Davis got a little emotional when he was kind of talking about that after the Tennessee game. And anyway, so that being said, like, it's not just Harrison Ingram's 14.5 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 2.3 assists. He's also shooting, just so you know, over 45% from the field. Aside from that, just the energy and passion that he brings is really enthusiastic. And Hubert Davis said that his teammates feed off of him. And it's quite obvious, saw it when he was able to get out for, I think he had it was 6 points, right, to start 8 points. He had the 2 3-pointers and the
followed by a dunk.
To start that Tennessee game, and then the team just starts rolling from there. So that being said, I would just point it to ball movement and the impact of Ingram as that transfer. But switching sides, we're going to get into women's basketball. The women's basketball team has not had as much success as the men's basketball team recently. Most recently, the number 24 North Carolina women's basketball team suffered its third consecutive loss, falling 65-58 to number 1 South Carolina Carmichael Arena. So, number 1, top ranked, and it was close, but still another loss after suffering 2 down that Gulf Coast showcase, which, again, apparently was frigid, but we'll get into that. The Tar Heels in that loss to South Carolina initially established themselves in the paint. They're forcing turnovers, secured a 19-10 lead by the end of the first quarter, but foul trouble, particularly for junior center Maria Gakdang, and just poor shot selection in general hindered UNC's performance. Again, I know Daniel talked about, running some sets late in the game. Could be the move, I don't know, but I will say graduate guard Lexi Donarski, she had some big 3-point shots after struggling in those games in Florida. So credits to her for bouncing back from a brief shooting slump on that. And again, it was a loss. It goes down in the record, but just want to shout out a really aggressive rebounding effort from especially senior forward Alyssa Usby, being able to contend with Camila Cardoso, and a really physical, really tall South Carolina team. That was a good thing they can take from that game. But all that being said, North Carolina still has suffered 3 consecutive losses, the women's team. So Carolina is one of the senior writers on this beat, one of the lead beat writers. What does UNC have to do, in your opinion, to get back on track?
Well, I think first it starts with they need to stay out of foul trouble. When they were playing over Thanksgiving break, it was Alyssa Utsby that was getting into trouble. And against South Carolina, it was Maria. So those two players specifically, we're seeing them put up points when, UNC needs it. And if they don't have them, they're going to struggle. And, the bench also really needs to step up. I remember head coach Courtney Banghart really kind of talking about how, much depth the team brings this year. But against South Carolina, the bench had 0 points. And to be honest, that's unacceptable. You need to be scoring off the bench. You need to have something going on because, it shouldn't be your starters carrying the effort. You need, especially if you're going to have a deep roster.
Iron 5.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Iron 5, but no, you're spinning. I mean, I think it's, if you bring in a player like Maria Gakdang, who completely changes the type of team UNC can be, you finally have a formidable 5. I would say, I mean, since for the first time since I've been here, since that class of, Usby, Kelly, formerly Kennedy Todd Williams, like, this is for them, and the current makeup of this team, Gakdang is that center that they've been waiting for. And she's the kind of person that they were missing when they went up against South Carolina and Leah Boston in the Sweet 16. They've been missing when they go up against Virginia Tech, teams with talented centers like that. So if you have her, she got to play the whole game.
Right.
And part of that too is, it's being smart and, not getting into any just, chippy, stupid slap fouls. Part of it though is also playing good help defense.
Yep.
And preventing, the slashers on team like South Carolina from getting to the paint in the first place, where then they're, just trying to draw contact essentially against players like Gakdang. I mean, I saw the same approach when South Carolina was playing Duke today in the fourth quarter. Like, it's go time. They're feeding Cardoso the ball. They are just running into you in the post, and you have to be prepared for that. So I know Banghart likes to stick to her man-to-man, but maybe a zone from time to time. They pulled out that 3 often in the third quarter just to give teams a different defensive look last season. But you gotta figure it out. I mean, they were able to throw in some other players who gave Gakdang some rest. Your Anya Poole, Zelaya came in, and both of them honestly held their own defensively, and UNC was really impressive in locking down on the defensive assignments.
Absolutely.
Truthfully.
Absolutely. I was about to say, Cardoso is their leading scorer, and UNC held her to 6 points. She averages 15 a game, and they held her to 6.
I mean, I think she had like 8 in the fourth quarter against Duke today. So like they couldn't have run the defensive assignments better on her.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you can't come in and then be an offensive liability.
Yes.
Like, UNC is not shooting well enough
Right.
for that to happen. So yeah, I mean, again, like, easier said than done. I'm no expert, nor do I claim to be, but you got to keep Usby and Gakdang out of foul trouble. But yeah, I would say, again, just in terms of positives, defensively, the Tar Heels were able to stick with South Carolina.
Absolutely.
Which is impressive.
Yeah.
But that being said, you gotta stay out of foul trouble. You also can't be looking completely lost on, offense and pulling up these last second, the shot clock sounding and
Mid-range jumper.
just like Deja Kelly mid-range jump. Like you can't like, and Deja Kelly, like she has a dangerous mid-range jumper bag.
Absolutely.
That's why they go to her. I get it. But
they're better when they move the ball.
yes. Or like if you had a Gak Dang late in the game that you could like go to in this. Anyway, so a lot to be said. But we will conclude there. Trust, we could go on for longer, but y'all don't want to be here all day listening to us. And we will get into some quick hits. Can I get a quick hits?
Quick hits.
Ooh, all right. So starting with men's soccer, the UNC men's soccer team season ended in a 1-0 loss to Oregon State in the NCAA tournament quarterfinals. The Tar Heels season ended in Chapel Hill, just one win away from the College Cup. That would have been in Louisville, but DTH will not be making the trip, nor will the Tar Heels. But to hear how that one went down, read Cade Shoemaker's Gamer and Brendan Lunga's side to learn more. A tough loss, but really a great season overall for the men's soccer team. So be sure to catch up on that coverage. Read that on the Daily Tar Heels website. And now in football news, UNC football is set to face West Virginia in the, get ready for this, Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Woo!
Woo! Bruh, I will not be going on. Okay. So that is
making it to Charlotte after all.
Hey, they're
Yo.
facts. Let's go.
Yo.
Yeah, so that is on December 27th. It's been a turbulent season. But we'll see if UNC can make it up in this postseason appearance. That being said, though, North Carolina's record in the last 7 postseason appearances, I think, is 1-6. So we'll see about that. But guys, we're definitely gonna have Cade on that game, so be prepared for some great coverage. Obviously, this selection, this bowl selection was like just announced before we got to the studio, so we have yet to figure out the coverage plan for that. But trust, we will have folks there, boots on the ground, to deliver you that juicy Mayo football content. All right, so men's basketball. Yes, we're back to men's basketball because the UNC men's basketball team will be traveling to New York City, the Big Apple, to take on the reigning national champions UConn in the Jimmy V Classic. And Gwen and I are going to be there. So,
Shout out.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge for the program.
MSG?
Again, like MSG, CBTM, and
The Big Apple.
The Big Apple. Shout out to the sports travel grant we got, the UNC Parents Office, for making that possible. But yeah, no, I mean, should be a really exciting game. A little bit disappointed we couldn't send anybody to cover that MSG game. It was the Ohio State, right? Last year.
Yeah.
Men's basketball game.
So? Yeah.
Yes.
It was like a very close win.
Yeah.
Ended up being really exciting, but you know what? We got
We'll
the
be
change
there.
to spare this year, so we will be
there.
We will be there. So stick around for that. And in women's basketball news, the UNC women's basketball team will be traveling to Connecticut, also to take on UConn. And that's in the Hall of Fame showcase. So we'll see Deja Kelly versus not Ozzy Fudd. Hope she's recovering, but Paige Beckers. Aaliyah Edwards in that matchup. So guys, like it's gonna be really exciting. Harry and I will be traveling to cover that game, and that's going to be on Sunday. Mohegan Sun. Turn me up. I'll see if I can stay away from the craps table. I'm playing. Yeah, no, so that should be a good one.
So
and
what's with the basketball game crossover with casinos lately in Atlantis too?
bro, like
Bruh. Like they're just trying to get them to gamble.
they're just trying
No,
to like
literally.
sports gambling is just, it's such an epidemic right now. No, I'm playing, but that should be a really cool one. A great slate of games that day too, with I believe it's Florida State, UCLA, and then Utah, South Carolina. Like holy matchup at center with that one. But we'll be at the nightcap game, that UConn UNC women's basketball game. So stick around for that coverage. All right, guys, and so to wrap it up, we've been blabbering on for a dang minute now, but just want to say, thanks for listening to Hark the Pod. This is our last episode of the semester. I know I can hear some of y'all crying on the other end, but it's okay. We'll be back next semester. But really, though, just want to say thanks for listening. We've really increased a lot of our engagement this semester. Doubled, some have said. I mean, the analytics speak for themselves.
Sources say
there have been doubled.
Right. So, I mean, that's just credits to our listeners. Also, credits to our AV team, Killing As Usual social team for putting those little reels out on Instagram, even though y'all do me dirty sometimes with the clips.
People come up to me and they recognize me from the podcast.
Oh my God. Dare I say famous?
Actually,
Yeah.
like a bunch of people in my classes are like, yo, I've seen your podcast. I'm like, wow.
So
something to think about.
Something to think about.
I mean, if you see me rolling up F doc next semester, shades on, hoodie up, like just know it's because of this Hark the Pod thing. Like,
We're campus celebs.
I can't handle it, but no, so I have it written here. As always, be sure to keep a lookout for the next episode next week, but it's actually, guys, it's not gonna be next week. It's gonna be next semester.
January.
That comeback will be amazing.
No, I mean,
12th maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, 12th
Something. That
episode
sounds
this
right.
season. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're cranking them out. This episode, of course, brought to you by me, Shelby Swanson, also Gwen Peace, Daniel Way, and Caroline Wills. Thanks as always to, of course, our listeners, but also our audiovisual team. And finally, Adrian Tillman for the theme music.